All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the regular virtual meeting of the City Planning Commission Committee of the Whole. Today is February 25th, 2021. This meeting includes the remote participation of board members and staff as authorized under Minnesota statutes, section 13D.021, due to the declared local public health emergency. My name is Alyssa Olson. I'm the Vice President of the Planning Commission, and I will call the meeting to order. So clerk, will you please call the roll?
Baxley.
Here.
Caprini.
Present.
Smiley. She said she wouldn't be here. Ford.
Here.
Marwa.
Here.
McGuire.
Here.
Meyer.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Member Schrader. Sweezy.
Here.
That's 8 members.
All right, so we have a quorum. With that, we will proceed to the agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. Commissioners, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Ford.
Let's see here. Commissioner Ford, if you want to make a motion, we're gonna have people write in the chat
Okay.
that you
All right.
have a motion. Yeah. Commissioner Marwa.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. Is there a second? Commissioner McGuire.
I will second that motion.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Baxley.
Here.
Would you like to vote yay or nay on the motion to approve the agenda?
Sorry. All right. Yay.
Okay, thank you. Caprini.
Aye.
Smiley. Ford.
Aye.
Marwa.
Aye.
Wire.
Aye.
Meyer.
Oh, sorry. Did I say the wrong one?
They sound alike. McGuire, Meyer. Olson.
Sorry.
Aye.
Schrader. Sweezy. Sweezy, are you there? That's 7 yeas.
All right. That motion passes and the agenda is adopted. Next on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 11th, 2021. Commissioners, can I have a motion to accept those minutes? Commissioner Ford.
I move we approve the minutes.
Okay, do I have a second? Commissioner Meyer.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Baxley.
Aye.
Caprini.
Aye.
Smiley. Ford.
Aye.
Marwa.
Aye.
McGuire.
Abstain.
Meyer.
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
Councilmember Schrader, Sweezy. That's 6 yeas.
All right, that motion passes. Next up, we don't have a consent agenda today, so we'll move on to the discussion items. And our first item for discussion is the Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House Designation Study Review and Comment. And staff is Rob Skalecki.
Thank you. Just 1 second here. This is my first cow meeting in this format, so I'm trying to figure out presenting. Can you see the slide right here?
We can.
Perfect. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Rob Skalecki, City Planner in the Historic Preservation section of CPED. This presentation is for Planning Commission Committee of the Whole comment for review of the Mary Loughran, this is for the Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House. The Mary Loughran Student Rooming Homes Historic District is after this. So it's for 2 designation studies for your review in this situation. The first property is the Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House, which is located at 948 18th Avenue Northeast. Staff is recommending that the Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House be designated as a local historic landmark. The Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House is significant as an example of a brick-clad Queen Anne dwelling that retains integrity to fully communicate this significance and its history. The property retains significant amount of the original design detail, including cream brick with red brick accent, massing, roof shapes, windows, and wood detail in porch areas. The subject property is representative of the development of Northeast Minneapolis and the growth of the city following annexation of land in Northeast Minneapolis. Residents of the Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House in the late 19th and early 20th centuries were a mix of middle and working class owners and tenants whose occupations, workplaces, and cultural origins are greatly characteristic of this area of the city at this time. The property remains as an excellent remnant of the built and social history of this part of Minneapolis. As such, staff finds the property is significant under criteria 1 for significant events and patterns of development, as well as criteria 4 for distinctive elements of an architectural style. Minneapolis Code of Ordinance requires that the planning director to submit all proposed designations to the Minneapolis City Planning Commission for review and comments on the proposed designation. As you may know, in its review, the City Planning Commission shall consider, but not limited to, the following factors, which is the relationship of the proposed designation to the city's comprehensive plan, the effect of the proposed designation on the surrounding area, and the consistency of the proposed designation with the applicable development plans or development objectives adopted by City Council. As for relationship to the proposed designation to the city's comprehensive designation plan, the future land use of the property is identified as corridor mixed use in Minneapolis 2040. Corridor mixed use includes a range of competing uses and a range of allowed building types with mixed use, multi-story development encouraged. The proposed designation would have no impact on the use of the subject property, and it would support the identified future land use for the area. The future built form guidance for the property is identified as Transit 10 in Minneapolis 2040. Transit 10 is applied along high frequency transit routes near metro stations in neighborhoods adjacent to or in downtown. Buildings in Transit 10 should reflect a variety of building types on moderate and large size lots, and building heights should be between 2 and 10 stories. The proposed designation would have no impact, again, on the built form of the subject property and supports the built form district for the area. The multifamily dwelling is 2.5 stories, and it's been historically tied to transit trends around Central Avenue Northeast in that corridor since the streetcar era. While the subject building is on the lower end of the Transit 10 building height scale, the dwelling remains as an excellent and unique architectural example of city development tied to historic demographic, commercial, and transportation trends in the area. Also, the property has served as medium to high density housing as an option near a significant transit and commercial artery for over 130 years. The following policies of Minneapolis 2040 would apply to the designation of the Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House. The first policy 60 is intrinsic value of properties, increase awareness, understanding, and appreciation of the economic and intrinsic value of older properties important to the city's heritage. The Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House is a significant example of an intact Queen Anne dwelling in Minneapolis and remains as one of the best examples of this style in Northeast Minneapolis. Landmark designation would protect the home for years to come and allow for increased awareness, appreciation, intrinsic and potential economic value for this unique piece of the city's architectural and social history. Policy 92 is to identify and evaluate historic resources, continue to identify, examine, and evaluate historic contexts and historic resources with a focus on communities that have been traditionally underrepresented. The Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House is an example of a significant cream brick Queen Anne dwelling, a category and construction of dwelling that is not currently represented in the city as an individual landmark. The property retains historic integrity to communicate its history as a dwelling that represents the growth of Northeast Minneapolis, the built and social environment of the neighborhood, and the history through its past occupants and use. Local designation would highlight the Queen Anne style of this property, and the property has been identified as among the best examples of a brick Queen Anne dwelling that retains and conveys the significance to this particular style and era of development in Northeast Minneapolis. And lastly, policy 93 is for stewarding. Historic properties preserve, maintain, and encourage the adaptive reuse of historic districts, landmarks, and historic resources, especially in locations that have experienced disinvestment. Historic preservation regulations that do come with historic designation would encourage the retention of this significant community resource. Local landmark designation ensures and protects the significant piece of the city's history through consideration of changes to the property through our review processes. For the effect of the proposed designation on the surrounding area, the designation again would help preserve an important remnant of Northeast Minneapolis and the development in the 1880s. And it communicates this history through the corresponding social, cultural, and economic growth of the area from that period into the 20th century. The design of the property will help preserve a building that has been a part of the community for over 130 years. The building has historically been associated with transportation, commercial, and social patterns that grew up around Central Avenue Northeast. As for the consistency of the proposed designation with the applicable development plans for the development objectives adopted by City Council, the proposed designation complies with policies set forth by the applicable small area plan, which in this case is the Central Avenue Small Area Plan, and the building exists within the transformative project area defined as the Central Arts Wedge within this area. And it outlines recommendations and strategies which can be viewed in the memo as well that was sent. But the preservation of the subject property is compatible with these recommendations that are stated in this plan and the strategy objectives as well. The architectural significance of the building has been a part of the area's built identity for over a century, and it's identifiable as a place that retains authenticity to the area's character. Connection to the significant historic building has already been approved through recent pedestrian-oriented overlay status, and the unified open space to the west of the building could have the potential to be transformed into a destination. The surrounding area includes parcels which could be newly developed to add to the Central Arts Wedge as well, to blend with the old and new buildings with the subject property, the Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House being a significant example of the latter as an old building. With that, I am able to take any questions, but I'm excited to hear your comments on this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Commissioners, are there questions or comments on this designation study? Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, first, I was wondering if we have the opportunity to hear from the property owner or if they have submitted any commentary about this if they're not available today.
That's a fair question. We have not received comment from the property owner. We've reached out to the property owner a few times following when the designation study was started in the first place, as well as recently for the actual designation staff report was published online, and staff reached out to the property owner at that time too. But we haven't received any comments from the property owner on this yet.
And Commissioner Meyer, a point of clarification, there will be a public hearing on this before the Heritage Preservation Commission. So the Planning Commission's role at Committee of the Whole is to review and comment. Typically at Committee of the Whole, we don't necessarily invite public comment if we don't have an applicant involved, which is the case here.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. So I'll proceed with some comments that I have about this. So I have much stronger feelings about the next item on our agenda. But I just want to note, in our role on the Planning Commission, it's to check the compatibility with the 2040 goals. And I just want to note that this is in tension with quite a few different goals, because this is on a corridor that people have high hopes for will become a much better public transit corridor going down Central Avenue. There's a bus station like right in front of this house. Like it's just like, I don't know, maybe 50 feet away where the transit shelter is. It's across the street from the Parker Skyview building, which is I think like 20-story building or something like that. So as the HPC and the council review this, I think it just needs to be noted that there's a high opportunity cost to it. Some competing goals, competing with the ones that you listed in the staff report. In the 2040 plan, we have, the number 1 goal on housing supply, goal number 2 on access to employment, goal number 4 on access to goods and services, goal number 15 on transportation and equity, goal number 16 on environmental impact, goal number 20 on increasing the frequency, speed, and reliability of public transit, goal number 38 on increasing affordable housing near transit and job centers, goal 66 on air quality, goal 67 on climate resilient communities, and goal 68 on energy efficiency and sustainable buildings. I mean, there are a lot of different competing goals there that I won't, read the full text of all of those, but I guess the reason I am very interested to know what the property owner has to say is, this building looks to me like it's in a pretty dilapidated condition. So if it is going to preserve, I hope someone has the resources to actually make it into something worthy of historic preservation, because it doesn't seem to be that's the case right now, and there's a lot of missed opportunity if this area in a very high frequency, that we're trying to make into a high frequency transit area is not available for that anymore. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Ford. Commissioner Ford, if you are talking, you are muted.
All right. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Right. Sorry. I noticed in the memo a reference to the State Historical Preservation Office and the fact that there has been no letter received yet. I'm curious, what is the role of a SHPO in the city process?
Thank you for that question. And actually, I forgot to clarify that we did receive a letter back from SHPO, and they concurred with staff findings that the property is a good candidate for local landmark designation. Unfortunately, that wasn't included in a time that would have been able to be attached to the document sent to you 30 days before this meeting. And SHPO's role in this is basically similar to your role to comment on it from their perspective as the state government agency, whether they believe the property is in line with what the city of Minneapolis uses for designation within. It's a certified local government, and they use the same criteria across that to determine whether or not properties are good candidates for local designation. So they do comment on the historic aspect on the argument for designation.
Thank you. But their comments then are based on the city's criteria.
That's correct, and as well as federal guidelines, so the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Ford. Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you. Thanks staff for the very extensive report. It's really interesting to me. I haven't been part of historical preservation in the past. So I was hoping you could expand upon this building appears to be in disrepair, and would giving this type of landmark status to it open it up to grants or other opportunities for funding? What I was aware of historical preservation is that sometimes making modifications to the building can be quite tricky because of the status in terms of permitting and keeping with the original intent of the design. So I'd like to hear staff's input on if we think this will help the building get back into a good repair, or if it may cause burden on getting it into repair as well.
With any property that's designated by the city, it goes through a review process for any changes that are made to the exterior. It depends on what the definition of repair is in this situation, I would say. But to your previous question as well, there may be financial incentives for this, but unfortunately not at the city level at this time. So if the property owner would want to pursue potential further National Register of Historic Places listing and work with the State Historic Preservation Office to determine if incentives are available for rehabilitation work on the property, I think that's definitely an option. But at this point, the city does not have financial incentive programs for rehabilitation of landmarks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Baxley.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, staff. Really interesting report. As you context this, I mean, you mentioned that it's a terrific example of this type of architecture and style. How do you context in the city? Are there other examples? Is this the only one? Do we understand this if we don't give this as kind of the last of its kind, or is this a group of buildings that existed in the city that we're trying to preserve? All of them. Could you just talk about that a little bit and how we think about context of this style of building?
Definitely, yeah. So this was actually first identified through survey, through a survey of Northeast Minneapolis. As you may have seen in the study, it was identified in 2004. And at that point, it was identified as a very good example of brick Queen Anne style. As the city's preservation staff, I just know from being familiar with buildings in this part of the city that it is a very rare type of building to have a cream brick Queen Anne building of this massing. And that's where it's determined, we're very familiar with all the surveys that have been done in the past of properties that have looked at different buildings like this throughout the city, as well as architects and builders and tenants of these buildings. So this was determined based on just all that information, which I hope was reflected well in the designation study too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxley. Commissioners, does anyone else have comments or questions? Oh, Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. Okay, so in the 7 different criteria that the city has that you evaluated, you found that this property fit 2 of the criteria out of the 7 for designation. And I just wanted to ask for that to be put into context, like, because I don't have a lot of familiarity with precedents for other properties, but how many criteria are projects typically expected to meet? Is it just like you meet 1 criteria out of the 7 and that's good enough to consider it, or do you need to meet a lot of them? Like what have been the standards up to now?
It's just 1. That's just one's needed. If it meets that, it is eligible for consideration as a local landmark or historic district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Commissioner Marwa.
Hi, my quick question about the study is that I was just looking at it on Google Maps, and it looks like there's like the adjacent garage parcel. Is that all part of the same structure though? Like that would the garage side would also be preserved, like they couldn't partition that side off and sell it or something? Robert.
The sale of that part, I can't answer that question. I'm not sure at this point, to be honest. But as far as anything that would be planned on the parcel itself, the parcel would be what's designated. Historically, though, and this is context in the study, there has been or had been a single family dwelling that existed there beginning in 1886, and it was demolished in 2016. So if any other building would want to be constructed there, that's not my expertise to determine if that would be appropriate as far as building on that lot. But from a historic perspective, something could be considered there if it would be appropriate, just given the precedent of what had been there historically. And as far as the garage that exists near the alley, that's determined to be a non-contributing part of this. That was outlined too in the designation study. So a proposed demolition of that may be easier to approve than, if anything else were to have been on that parcel. So that's something that we do understand maybe looked at in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marwa. Commissioner Ford.
Thank you. Commissioner Meyer began his questions by saying that there's a tension, and there's always a tension between various considerations in naming, designating something historic. That is always true, and often true, and there are certainly some tensions here. But looking at the property and reading the history in the report, I think it simply is a significant architectural, historical building, and is worthy of being preserved. I understand that there are difficulties in preserving buildings, but as far as acknowledging that yes, it's historically significant and is unusual, I can't think of another brick Queen Anne house in the city. I'm by no means an expert, but there are various Queen Annes in South Minneapolis by the freeway, but they're all wood. So I just want to say that I support the comments of the staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Ford. I'm not seeing other questions or comments, so I have a question for staff. I'm wondering in this report and in the next one that we're about to see, there was reference to small area plans, and in the it was my understanding that in the 2040 plan, all the small area plans would be absorbed into the 2040 plan, and that the small area plans wouldn't really be something we'd be considering anymore. So just wondering if someone could say something about that.
You are correct, Commissioner Olson. Small area plans no longer exist on their own. They have all been incorporated into the 2040 plan. So I assume that was just a carryover from an old staff report template that we need to update. So thank you for catching that.
Okay, that makes more sense. All right. If no one else has any more comments, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. And that is the Mary Loughran Student Rooming Homes Historic District Designation Study Review and Comment. And we have Rob Skalecki again. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you able to see this presentation as well?
We can.
Great. Again, my name is Rob Skalecki. I'm a city planner in the historic preservation section of CPED. And this is a presentation for Planning Commission, Committee of the Whole, comment and review of the Mary Loughran Student Rooming Homes Historic District, which includes 3 dwellings located at 1103 4th Street Southeast, 406 11th Avenue Southeast, and 410 11th Avenue Southeast. Staff is recommending that the Mary Loughran Student Rooming Homes Historic District be designated as a historic district. The subject dwellings are collectively among the best identified grouping of dwellings that retain their original architectural identity and historic integrity to fully communicate their significance as early 20th century student rooming homes, a type and use of building emblematic of residential Dinkytown and the University of Minnesota area. The collection and location of dwellings in their shared development and residential history is strongly tied to the growth of the University of Minnesota and Dinkytown in the beginning of the 20th century. The properties are significant as a group of William Kenyon designed dwellings that are highly characteristic of the architect in their construction and styles. Kenyon is known by the city to be a master architect. The properties in their styles of shingle, Queen Anne, and colonial revival are among the best examples of a collection of dwellings that retain a cohesive identity and communicate Kenyon's skill, and they exist as more modest and practical interpretations of the architect's work in design and massing. As such, staff finds that the properties have significance under criteria 1 for significant events and patterns of development, for criteria 3 for distinctive elements of neighborhood identity in their connection to residential Dinkytown and the University of Minnesota area residences, and criteria 6 for works of a master architect for a collection of William Kenyon design dwellings. Again, in its review, the City Planning Commission shall consider, but not be limited to, the relationship of the proposed designation to the city's comprehensive plan, the effect of the proposed designation on the surrounding area, and the consistency of the proposed designation with applicable development plans or development objectives adopted by City Council. I did send a memo earlier today following up from the previous memo sent a month back, just clarifying that the future land use for the properties in the district is identified as community mixed use in Minneapolis 2040 comprehensive plan. The previous memo sent a month ago had incorrectly stated the properties were corridor mixed use. Community mixed use, of course, includes a range of competing uses and a range of allowed building types, with mixed use, large scale development encouraged. However, single use residential is not permitted in new development. Currently, the area is medium density and high density residential with nearby institutional and commercial uses. The proposed designation would have no impact on the current use of the subject properties. The properties would not conform to the identified future land use for parcels in their in their current and historic use. The historic district has always served as high density student housing as an option and location. The dwellings have been intertwined or identified as a significant example of a group of student rooming homes that are best able to collectively communicate this history, and the properties have retained their use for over 100 years. The Mary Lochran Student Rooming Homes Historic District has been historically tied to transit, commercial, and institutional trends that developed and the development patterns that are characteristic of this area. The future built form guidance for the properties has been identified as Corridor 6 in Minneapolis 2040. Corridor 6 is applied along high frequency transit routes as well as near metro stations. Buildings in Corridor 6 should reflect a variety of building types, and building heights should be between 2 and 6 stories. The proposed designation again would not have an impact on the built form for the subject properties and supports the built form district for the area. The multiple family dwellings are between 2 and 2.5 stories. And as previously stated, they've been historically tied to transportation trends along 4th Street since the streetcar era. And for over a century, the dwellings have accommodated walkable student access to the University of Minnesota, commercial Dinkytown, and transit access along 4th Street and nearby University Avenue Southeast. The following policies of Minneapolis 2040 would apply to the designation of the Mary Lochran Student Rooming Homes Historic District. Policy number 60 for intrinsic value of properties. The Mary Lochran Student Rooming Homes are significant as an example of an intact William Kenyon designed dwellings in the city of Minneapolis and remain among the best identified examples of student rooming homes with sustained use and retained their collective architectural identity. Designation would allow for the increased awareness, appreciation, intrinsic and potential economic value and usefulness of this piece of the city's architectural and social history, and designation would protect these homes for years to come. Also under Policy 92, to identify and evaluate historic resources, the Mary Lochran Student Rooming Homes Historic District exemplifies property types which are student rooming homes that are not currently represented in the city as landmarks or a historic district. The properties retain good historic integrity to communicate their collective identity as dwellings that represent the student cultural identity of Dinkytown and related growth of the University of Minnesota. Local designation would highlight this unique collection of dwellings built by a master architect and characteristic of his work. The city of Minneapolis has not yet identified properties in which the root of significance is based in renter history, including sustained student renter history. The city has not yet designated more modest design interpretations of buildings by William Kenyon, who's a master architect, nor has the city designated a group of neighboring properties by Kenyon. The histories of renters and women's roles in property development, ownership, and management have long been underrepresented in the body of locally designated properties in the city of Minneapolis. The Mary Lochran Student Rooming Homes Historic District is a strong example of both. Lastly, for Policy 93 for stewarding historic properties, local landmark designation ensures the protection of the significant piece of the city's history and consideration of changes to the properties through historic preservation regulations. Historic designation would encourage the retention of a collection of significant community resources. For the effect of the proposed designation on the surrounding area, the designation will help preserve an important piece of Dinkytown's residential history and communicate this history of the corresponding social, cultural, and institutional growth of the area of that period into the first decades of the 20th century. The designation of the properties will help preserve buildings that are an excellent example of distinct designs by William Kenyon and have been used as affordable high-density student rooming homes for over 100 years. Preserving historic residential dwelling units with character adjacent to historically active transportation, commercial and pedestrian-focused corridors will serve as an example for high-quality housing preservation through sustainable practices that reduce human environmental impacts. The properties are on and adjacent to 4th Street Southeast and are blocks from the heart of commercial Dinkytown and the University of Minnesota campus. The buildings have, again, historically been intertwined with transportation, commercial, academic, institutional, and social patterns that grew up around this area. As for the consistency with the proposed of the proposed designation with applicable development plans or development objectives adopted by City Council, as we previously stated, this may not be relevant, but it was analyzed in staff memo. I'll just state that the proposed designation complies with the historic resources policy set forth with the previously applicable small area plan, which was the Marcy Homes Neighborhood Master Plan that was completed in 2014. The buildings would help preserve and enhance the residential history of Dinkytown and the area and raise awareness of this unique collection of woman-owned master architect design dwellings in their prominent historic location. The preservation of the buildings is important as defined in the previous study. The dwellings are associated with the university life, trends of students living close to campus, and the fabric and culture of the area. The subject properties exist as excellent historic architectural examples of student rooming homes. And with that, for this one, I will take any questions as well, but I'm happy to hear your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Commissioners, are there any comments or questions? Commissioner Meyer.
So I'm really opposed to this one, and I just want to contrast it with the one that we just reviewed, where I do think in the previous one, there was a legitimate case to make for the historic preservation, even though it competed with a lot of other objectives of the 2040 plan. It met the historic ones. I don't feel that this one does at all. And I live in this neighborhood. I really value the historic preservation that the HPC has done in a lot of different areas. I'm really grateful for all the beautiful buildings that are protected in the 5th Street Historic District, in the Greek/University Historic District, and in Dinkytown, for buildings like the Dinky Dale building, or the building that Espresso Royale used to be in, or Al's Breakfast, or just so many other buildings that have really clear historic value. I'm glad that those are protected and can't be destroyed, protected from the market. I don't feel that these three houses are remarkable in any way. I've lived there a long time, walked past them many, many times. Never once thought that they were remarkable. They're very dull. They're the type of things that you could see similar designs all over the city. No one I've talked to feels that they're very remarkable. I feel, and another point of a contrast, the property that we just looked at was identified as a potential landmark in 2004. The Greek/University Historic District was done in 2003 and includes a lot of historically valuable buildings nearby these three, and quite notably did not include these three. If they had historic significance, you would have thought that they would have been included in that. I feel like this is motivated in part because there was a development proposal for these sites, and there's been a lot of opposition to increased density in the neighborhood. And I feel like that's what this is more about, is just trying to oppose more density. But the 2040 plan has an opposite goal. This is a corridor 6 space. The E-line BRT is planned to be built next to here, and I think that the goals that the 2040 plan has around climate and access to public transit and increased housing should easily outweigh the negligible value that these were provided in terms of historic value. I also just want to note the irony of protecting the rooming houses that the city made illegal to build. I mean, you can't build rooming houses today. And then I just wanted to read this this one statement on page 2. So it says, the designation of the properties will help preserve the buildings that are excellent examples of distinct designs by William Kenyon and have been used as affordable, high-density student rooming homes for over 100 years, preserving historic residential dwelling units with character adjacent to historically active commercial and pedestrian-focused corridors, will serve as an example of high-quality housing preservation through sustainable practices that help reduce environmental impacts. The properties on and adjacent to the 4th Street Southeast and blocks from the heart of commercial Dinkytown and the University of Minnesota campus. The buildings have been historically intertwined with transportation, commercial, and academic, institutional, and social patterns which grew around this area. So in that statement, there were a few things that were said that I feel should lead to the opposite conclusion of what staff reached. I mean, if we're trying, if student housing, like providing more student housing, more density, more access to public transit, and higher sustainability are all goals, then we should support allowing this to be turned into the higher density project that was proposed and that passed the Planning Commission last year, that would provide more students access to this public transit corridor in a more sustainable way. So I guess I would really urge other commissioners, the HPC and the council, to reject this designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. Go ahead, Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a similar question to what Commissioner Meyer asked with the first case on if this, if this request came out from a council member and from city staff, or if it came from the property owners directly. And I guess I'll also comment that I tend to agree with Commissioner Meyer on many of his points, that these don't appear to be particularly remarkable when you're walking down the street, or historic to the lay person. Again, if you're just walking through, and many of the points noted in the staff report, I think could be shared over the greater neighborhood area as a whole, as opposed to just these specific homes. So I do think it's a very different case than the first situation, but I would be curious to hear again why this one came to be, and if the property owners wanted to comment on that as well.
Thank you. These 3 were actually proposed for demolition in April of 2020. The demolition was denied by the HPC after they believed that the properties seemed to hold significance as a district. The demolitions were heard individually for each 3 properties. So the HPC at that point denied the demolitions of these 3. They placed the properties under interprotection and they called for this study to be written. The property owner, who was also part of the applicant, I would say, and the applicant team appealed that decision, and that appeal was denied at City Council. So City Council upheld the HPC's decision to carry out this study. So that's how it got to the designation point that you're reviewing it as.
All right, Commissioner Ford.
Thank you. Couple of questions. I read the staff report, but I can't for the life of me can't remember. Were these three buildings built as student housing, or did they become student housing?
They were built as speculative rental properties. In the study, staff clarifies that it can't be determined for sure how the properties were built. The fact that they were built as speculative rentals and they at first served as select single family and select multifamily then before they transitioned fully to student use. We can't determine exactly why they were built, but based on the development patterns of the era, based on the development of both the commercial Dinkytown area in that century, as well as the University of Minnesota, the homes quickly became student use. And the owner, who was Mary Lochran, who owned the buildings from when they were constructed in 1901 up until her death in 1944, she ended up advertising the properties for student use, probably realizing that it was destined to be used by students based on the trends of the area. So we are unsure of exactly why they were built. They were built as speculative rental properties, we know that, but it doesn't seem like the property owner had a specific tenant in mind when these were rented in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Secondly, at the city level of historic preservation, am I correct in thinking that the issue is the exterior? It's not as though, well, am I correct?
That's correct. Yes, these actually the historic district and the Tyler Street Northeast John Cook House both are being designated for exterior. Interior designation is very rare among properties that are designated by the city.
Right.
Any changes that would be made to the interior would not be reviewed in the same way as anything that would be made to the exterior of the properties if they were to be designated.
So it seemed to me to be reasonable that if you were walking down the street, you could say, look at those big single family houses. And typical of many big single family houses in the city. So it seems to me like reaching to the issue of there were student housing where nothing on the outside tells you that is in fact reaching. I mean, I would be more impressed if there were a larger area that was going to be defined as a historic student housing area. But to pick three houses and say these, I mean, I guess the fact that they have a common ownership, a common early ownership. But I'm having I'm a passionate historic preservationist. I'm having a hard time getting my head around this one. And one last question, just on process, that for the fellow commissioners or anybody, I guess. What is the nature of our reviewing and commenting? Do we? I was surprised that there was no motion following the first house. So
a lot of the things that we see at the committee of the whole are just for us to make comment on, and then they are received and filed. And then if there's anything we need to vote on, that happens at our regular meetings. I don't know if anyone else has comments about that.
Well, so this will come then before the full commission to act as they chose.
No, so this will go for the Heritage Preservation Commission for action. That would include a public hearing, and as part of the package of materials that's put together for the Heritage Preservation Commission meeting, the comments received by the Planning Commission would be included. Just like you can see in your staff report attachments, there's a placeholder for comments from SHPO. Planning Commission comments are included in that and forwarded on to the HPC for consideration.
So
But
how are,
HPC makes the decision on the designation.
sure. So how are the comments of the commission arrived at and transmitted?
I'm recording them right now, and I will draft a memo that I'll send to the Heritage Preservation Commission, and that'll be included in the documentation. I know at least one of you had questions about the blank appendices at the end, and that's where these documents are added. So that will be sent to the Heritage Preservation Commission. And of course, that will be public record of my memo drafting your comments and relaying it to them.
Could the, and I apologize for this, but could the commission choose to take a formal action commenting on a proposal?
The Planning Commission does not have any authority to take action on a designation study.
No, I meant to comment, a formal action to comment. Like, could we all say, boy,
I think I'm confused by the question. You mean at the end of this? No, this isn't listed as an action item. It's just, you know, a comment.
It's listed as review and comment, right?
Correct.
So what if the commission's unanimously the commission thought it was a great idea? How would that be conveyed to the commission, to the HPC?
So we again would just summarize the comments. I mean, the only action that could be taken is to receive and file.
I really don't understand that because it says review and comment. Other than, I mean, we could all be having our own personal comments, but okay, we'll move on. Now I understand the process.
So it relates to how this is reflected, what the options are for actions in our legislative management system called LIMS. So because this is not an action item on our agenda, it's just for review and comment. If the Planning Commission decided that they wanted to take some sort of other action at the end, it would just be review and comment. That's the only option.
I understand that, but we're missing the comment part. There's individual people commenting, like myself, but what is to stop us from adopting a motion to send a letter to the HPC with our comments, you know, and agree on a comment? I guess there's no answer. Okay, well, thank you very much. No.
Yeah, unfortunately, the way that Planning Commission comments on is through a meeting as this is, and then staff transmits the comments via memo to the HPC before their hearing. So I'm not sure if there's any other action you would be able to make for that.
Well, one last comment, and I will quit. You know, the Marcy Homes Neighborhood Association had the opportunity to, as a body, make a comment. Why couldn't the Planning Commission, as a body, take the opportunity to make a comment?
That's what you're doing. If you would like to formalize that in one succinct comment that the commission agrees to in an action, that would be fine. And we would include it in the memo that goes to the HPC.
So that could be done. Okay, that's my only question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Ford. Commissioner Sweezy.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Yeah, I just want to provide a different point of view than the one that I've been hearing most of the time. You know, the HPC exists for a reason, and they have a different purpose and a different reason than we do. And I think that I don't have a problem with this designation. This sounds historically significant to me. To me, it doesn't matter what it looks like when you walk down the street. That's the reason we have professionals to tell us what the historic significance of things is before they get torn down. In fact, it's very often not obvious, especially with things that are old, what they might have been used for before or why they might have some value. And I think also, again, just because something can be put somewhere that we can put more people in doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right thing to do. The city is a big place with a lot of competing interests and a lot of important things. And I think I actually support the staff recommendation here, whether it's one house or 3 houses or 30. And I think it's important. And I find some of the comments actually a little bit dismissive. Well, we could put something bigger there. You know, there's, you know, take a look at Lost Twin Cities, the documentary and the book sometime, if you want to see where that kind of thinking, I think, has gotten us over the years. And I think this kind of work put in by staff has a great deal of value. And the HPC commissioners are selected for their expertise and all of that. And I think when they should get deference, they should. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to review this. But I think that this is really their call.
Thank you, Commissioner Sweezy. Commissioner Baxley.
Thanks. I like Commissioner Ford. I think I'm struggling a bit with this. I find the fact that there are 3 buildings here by one architect, and I mean they're charming, and but I don't know if that necessarily defines a district, and I guess I'm struggling with the designation in criteria 1. The fact that they will built as spec houses initially that then became student residents. I think had they been designed and built as student residences and sort of established that from the beginning would for me hold more significance. So I do struggle with that criteria 1 designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxley. Commissioner Caprini.
Hi, I wanted to say thank you to Commissioner Sweezy for her comments. I've been sitting here looking at these 3 houses and realizing what it was that was attracting me to them so much. These are the homes that I grew up around. And, you know, I grew up in North Minneapolis. The home I originally lived in was where Franklin Field is, Franklin Middle School Field. It was a house that is very similar to the one in the center, except it was a big white porch. So there is that connection for me. But my comment is that we've gotten really, really good about tearing down old things. I just feel like we've gotten to a place where I'm all for density, but I do see the historic, the need for historic preservation for these 3 houses. You know, I think about some of the places that I've traveled around in the country, and I was in New York about a year or so ago. I don't recall the exact area because I was in a taxi cab, but there were some homes that looked very similar to this, and they were surrounded by many of the same kinds of buildings that we're building now. And yes, I was a little offed by some of the comments about the way that they look, but I guess I'm in a place where I understand our responsibility on this planning commission. And I've said this before, it's kind of like a one-stop yellow light stop. There's no real action that's happening except us having a conversation about what we are being presented, which I appreciate because I'm learning a lot about city development, and I appreciate that. And I have a lot of respect for the comments and that are made in regards to the work that we're doing. But I agree with Commissioner Sweezy. I hope that they're able to get the historic preservation that I think these homes deserve. We've got plenty of them on the north side that have been renovated, and they're quite attractive and beautiful. It's a shame that we're constantly trying to take away from our past and surround ourselves with just these big shiny objects. It just, for me, it's almost like living in a concrete jungle in some sense. And it's just unfortunate. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Caprini. Commissioner Marwa.
Yeah, hi. I also just wanted to echo Commissioner Caprini and Commissioner Sweezy's comments. I also, I like these buildings. I don't I think the staff report was so thorough and was really fascinating. The more you read about them and the history of the Lockrans and everyone, I think that's kind of what historic preservation is meant to do, is make you think and make you know the history of your city. And I didn't know so much about the place of that. So I think, again, also as Commissioner Sweezy said, HBC asked for this study for a reason, and I think I would, just like to refer to them to make the decision in the final call based on their expertise. And tearing it down for another empty student housing building for now just doesn't sit well with me. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Marwa. Commissioner McGuire.
Quick question for staff. This situation is different from the first because the property owners are supportive of this designation, it appears. Is this a designation that a property owner could contest or remove from their property if the property was sold in the future? So obviously these are not held by the city. So if you could just clarify a bit about that, if it runs with the property or what it would take to remove it. My concerns with the first one are that putting that designation on the property might make it more of a burden to actually get the property into compliance with our city code and remove the eyesore for the neighbors that I hear that they're complaining about. I don't have that concern for this one because they appear really well maintained. So is this something that would run with the property in perpetuity, or could you just expand on that a little bit? Again, sorry, I'm new to the historic preservation, so thank you for helping me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for your question. Designation does last as long as it does. It lasts for pretty much ever, unless for some reason a property is de-designated, which I don't think really happens. Even we've had parcels where parts of a building will be, they'll succumb to fire or something like that, unfortunately, and still changes that go on that parcel. The parcels are still designated as historic properties by the city. So we will look at that and we'll review anything that would happen on that parcel. I think you had another part to your question. Is that correct, or am I thinking incorrectly?
Yeah. So if this property was sold to somebody in the future, you kind of answered that. That would carry on to the future homeowner as well.
That's correct. Yeah, I don't believe of an instance where a property owner has de-designated their property. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Meyer.
First, just wanted to clarify, the property owner in this case is very opposed to this designation, correct? We received that letter in emails today.
I believe so, yes. They originally wanted to demolish the 3 properties, so I believe they are, yeah.
Right. So just wanted to correct that. So it sounds like, we've heard kind of divided commentary. So I'm curious with what staff would do with that if we don't take a formal motion on the letter. So like, I'm thinking back to the earlier case where we had the conservation district that was proposed for Budamakaska, and I think we had pretty unanimous thoughts on that, and then staff wrote a letter commenting in opposition to the conservation district. This time there's a split point of view. So how would staff take that?
We would simply summarize the various opinions of the individual planning commissioners and state that there was not a majority opinion on the commission about what should happen with this designation study from the planning commission's perspective.
Okay, so would it be appropriate to propose a motion to direct staff to write a letter recommending against the designation?
You could certainly propose something like that if I guess that would be up to the president, considering that this is just a review and comment, or up to the vice president in this case, whether or not to entertain a motion.
Okay. Vice President Olson, do you have any recommendation?
I think that as long as staff are summarizing commissioners' individual comments, that is going to communicate what we need to communicate effectively.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Meyer, did you have any other? No. Okay.
No, thank you.
Commissioner.
Oops. I'm sorry, Vice President, did you call my name?
Yes. Did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to actually repeat what you just said, because that's my understanding of how we would be handling this, is that we're simply making comments that would be summarized and moved on to the historic preservation, and it would be a done deal. It's not as if we collectively need to vote on whether there was 25 or 50% of us who had a for or against opinion. We're just simply having a conversation, and it just kind of gets moved to the next phase and then we're kind of just done with it and move on. So I just wanted to make that comment because that was the way that I understood it. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Caprini. All right, commissioners, any other comments or questions on this item? Oh, Commissioner Ford.
Yes, I just want to, I mean, I'm content to let it go as is proposed to go and have staff try to summarize the comments that occurred here. But I cannot accept the idea that if somebody here made a motion and it was seconded, it couldn't be dealt with by this commission.
I'll see if Kimberly wants to respond to that.
Go ahead.
No, I don't intend to make a motion. But there was the notion was just put forward that we couldn't choose to take an action of making a comment or whatever.
We don't have a precedent for doing that. It's never been proposed. It's never been something that staff has looked into or the city clerk's office has ever weighed in on. So if the commission chooses to go in that direction, I think you feel free to do that. But again, we don't have a precedent for that. I don't know that we want to set one. But if that's the will of the commission at this point, feel free to go ahead and make a motion. And we can.
No, it is not my.
Sent to the HPC.
Sorry, it's not my intent to do that. I just wanted to clarify that what I said. That's all. I'm not proposing any action here.
All right, Commissioner Sweezy.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, as I heard everything just play out here, irrespective of whether there's a precedent, we had a question and it was determined that the commission did not speak with one mind on this issue and that there were a number of different points of view which will be communicated to the body that actually has to take action on this. I then heard Commissioner Meyer say he wished to bring a motion anyway to see if there would be unanimous agreement. And frankly, even though there's no precedent on it, I think that's a bad practice to get into, forcing people to vote on things that we're not going to be voting on just so that one person can call a vote on something when all we're being asked to do is give feedback. So thank you.
So the preservation ordinance is written to allow the Planning Commission to review and comment. It's not asking for action from the Planning Commission, which is why it was put on the agenda this way, and that's how we typically handle these. So, you know, I guess that's where we're at from a staff perspective. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Kimberly. All right, commissioners, I'm not seeing any more comments or discussion. So we will move on to our next item. Thank you, Rob, for all of your time today. And our final item for discussion, is 1207 Glenwood Avenue, and staff is Andrew Friends.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sorry for the delay in getting the screen share set up there. Today, for your preliminary feedback, is a proposed project at 1207 Glenwood Avenue. The proposed project would be a new 7-story mixed-use building containing 125 dwelling units and approximately 3,000 square feet of retail space. There would be 68 enclosed parking spaces at the interior of the site. The project site is located at the intersection of Glenwood and Fremont Avenues in the Harrison neighborhood. Nearby here, is kind of this neighborhood is going through a change and getting a significant increase in transit accessibility with the construction of the Green Line extension, or the Southwest line. The future Van White station is approximately 2.5 blocks south of the station. And there also are future plans to put arterial bus rapid transit on Glenwood Avenue. This property is currently zoned C2, as well as the pedestrian oriented overlay district and the transit 15 built form overlay district, and it is in the destination mixed use future land use category. The applicant will be seeking a minor subdivision to convey the southwest portion of the property to the adjacent property to the south. That area would accommodate a relocated mini soccer pitch and outdoor dining area that are associated with a brewery on the adjacent property to the south. And that space, that current outdoor space, is on the property today. The property will also need a variance to increase the maximum permitted setback in the pedestrian oriented overlay district. So in the PO overlay, there is a maximum setback of 8 feet on adjacent to front and corner side yards to create a consistent street wall. At this section of Fremont here adjacent to this property is proposed to be reconstructed in coordination with the light rail project. With that reconstruction, the street will be built with a wider landscape boulevard on this side of the street and an off-street bike trail on the opposite side of the street. As part of that reconstruction, this property is subject to a permanent 6-foot easement adjacent to Fremont Avenue. And the proposed building would be located more than 8 feet from the actual property line, but within 8 feet of the easement. So it would need a variance to that PO standard. And of course, the project would require site plan review. Overall, the proposed project is very much in keeping with the applicable land use guidance and policies that apply to this site. And city staff do not have significant concerns about the project. There are some details that we do have some minor concerns on and would like the commission's feedback on. The first one is, as shown here, both the south and west elevations, those are the interior of the site, contain sections of blank wall on the first and second floors of over 25 feet in length, which would require alternative compliance as part of site plan review. And so staff, we're interested in feedback from the commissioners on these blank walls. And then we are also interested in feedback from the commission on the 2-story spaces fronting both Glenwood and Fremont, and thoughts that the commission might have on the pedestrian experience adjacent to those 2-story spaces, and whether architectural features or some other strategies to make that frontage more pedestrian scaled should be pursued as part of the project. So those are the 2 items that staff is particularly looking for feedback on from the Planning Commission. But of course, we welcome any other feedback from the commission. And so that's the extent of my introduction, and the applicant team is here and would like to present as well.
Thank you, Andrew. Do we have the applicant on the line?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for having us tonight. My name is Christian Lawrence, and I'm the founder and CEO of Rise Modular and Rise Development. I grew up in South Minneapolis, and I now live and work in downtown Minneapolis, and I plan to continue doing so for many years and hopefully many decades to come. Rise is an innovative real estate development and construction company, and we're focused on leveraging our volumetric modular technology to build multifamily housing faster, more cost efficiently, and with higher quality and environmental sustainability. We successfully completed our first apartment project in Minneapolis a couple of months ago called Mod 42. It's a 30-unit, 3-story transit-oriented project on 42nd Street, 1 block or so west of Hiawatha. And we are currently constructing units for the Alvera, which is a 193-unit 5/2 apartment project in downtown St. Paul. The project we are excited to present and discuss with you tonight would likely be our 5th project and 2nd in Minneapolis. We're very excited about the neighborhood and to be amongst the first mixed-use multifamily developments in the Bassett Creek Valley. And we believe our project will serve as a catalyst to further investment in the Harrison neighborhood for years to come. To that end, we've spent the last several months working very closely with our immediate neighbor to the south, the landlord and Ladona Cerveceria, to create a plan that builds on and enhances the revitalization of this particular block of Fremont that they have pioneered. We welcome any feedback from the committee as to how we might improve on our goal of creating a truly great mixed-use neighborhood at this location. And I'm happy to take any questions about my company. Otherwise, I'll pass it off to our design team from DJR to further present the project.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aaron Johnson with DJR Architecture. Or if I can just share the screen here. We have 2 others with us from DJR, John Jacobs and Josh Fowler on this team. Just going to give you a brief overview of the project, how it fits in the urban fabric and the latest developments we're looking at. As Andrew said, this project is in the Harrison neighborhood, currently zoned now for Transit 15. He's gone over it is on a corner site where both right-of-ways are in the pedestrian overlay district. And this area has a lot of green open space currently around the district, good transit, and future developments of light rail. So here's just, I'm just going to run through quickly, just a look at the neighboring buildings, what's directly adjacent in this neighborhood, which is quite a wide variety, but mostly 1-story industrial looking buildings. We have the current street and existing conditions. We have a 1-story building on site right now. There's a 1-story building adjacent to the west of us that has an existing fence and overhead utilities. A lot of surface parking in the area currently. Currently, this site is pretty much 100% impervious surface. So we'd be looking at reducing that impervious surface with our application. The streetscape on here is our site is here. This is the current streetscape along there. Opposite on Glenwood Avenue is more 1-story industrial buildings. And then on Fremont, we can see the site we're looking at right now is right here in the street view. The existing soccer field is here, and a brewery and foundry are right next door. So in the survey, one interesting thing is Andrew mentioned that we're proposing a variance on the corner portion of our site, and the reason is that there are 2 easements along Fremont right now. One is a permanent one is a temporary one. So the permanent one is a 6-foot easement right now. So in terms of buildability, being able to stay off and create this corner the way that the building should perform in the environment is the reason that we're asking for that variance. So with that, I'll jump in just to the site plan and give you a brief overview of what's happening. So this is the area. What we can see is the easement line is right here. Our property line is right here. And so with how we're situating this building as an L on the site, we're proposing that lobby be set off because there is an existing planting strip on the edge of the sidewalk right now that would create a very narrow, outdoor space outside of this lobby. We're proposing retail on Glenwood, loft units along Fremont, and then our vehicular access would come in off of Fremont, and we would have entries into parking at L1 and parking at L2. But our main pedestrian entrance would be at this corner. So in the back of the building, we have a potential amenity space. This area right here is to be the relocated playfield that it currently exists on the site today, but more in this location right here. The blank walls that Andrew spoke about are located on the west side here, next to this existing one-story building. And currently there is a fence line right here. We're proposing to put the transformer in this location as it needs to be adjacent to it right away. And walls, adjacent to the transformer cannot have openings, for fenestration. So moving up the building, just a brief overview. The ground floor is made up of commercial lobby and loft units and parking lining the back. So we're wrapping the right-of-ways with active uses and or exiting. As we move up, these retail spaces are double height spaces along with the lobby being a double height space. These loft units would be partially two levels. And level 3 would be fully residential with an amenity space potentially. And the rest of the building would be all residential up until the 7th floor that we are proposing a step back at the corner for an outdoor amenity and amenity on the top floor. Materials for this project are pretty straightforward. What we're trying to do is provide exterior lighting and an exterior design that fits with the constructability of the modular project that we're trying to deliver. Right now, we're proposing mostly metal panel, brick on the base with a combination of storefronts and possibly burnished block on the backside. So these are just the elevations quick that we're providing a base, middle, and top. These are through each of the sides. We have a section of just basically how we're stacking this building as a 7-story building, and then some images. So this would be an image from the corner of Glenwood and Fremont. This image would be from the south, showing where our parking and vehicular access is coming, and the adjacency of the brewery. This would be the back courtyard between us, our site, and the brewery. And this would be on Glenwood Avenue on the west side, showing where the blank walls were intended, that Andrew pointed out, and the location of the transformer. When we see this backyard, this is something that we're considering the design of right now, and still in motion, where we're considering a lot of things as we view this in the future as an active space that could potentially have art on it, potentially have an interesting amenity that creates, the goal would be to try to create a symbiosis between this project and the existing brewery to the south. We do have a shadow study. There are no single-family homes adjacent to this property, and we're just showing the modular project that Christian referenced before that he's put together to just give our planning commission an idea of what we mean by modular housing. So these modules will be building a two-story concrete podium, and then we stack these modules like Legos. The benefit of this is less construction time in the field that reduces impacts to the surrounding neighborhood. Currently, we're scheduled to meet with the neighborhood at their next board meeting in the Harrison neighborhood, and we've been communicating with Councilmember Ellison to introduce the project to him also. So with that, I think we can take any questions commissioners might have, and thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. We'll start off with Commissioner Caprini.
Thank you. First comment is, I believe the first gentleman that spoke, Mr. Lawrence, correct?
Yep.
Okay. You referred to the area as Bassett Creek Valley, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of spooked me. I grew up over there, and that changes the whole scope of what I believe that area really represents. Really concerning. It speaks volumes to what is actually happening across the country, which I expect to happen because I'm no one that doesn't expect change to occur. And I'm like most humans, I do struggle with some changes that need to happen, but I'm able to adapt and deal with that. But by changing or using that term, it reminded me, and I'm going to be a minute because I usually don't talk. It reminded me of a post that I saw on social media the other day, and it was a poster of 3 people, non-melanin people, sitting at what I assume was a cozy restaurant of some sort, and over their head it read, "The new quote unquote soul of Harlem," and I just about vomited in my mouth. So my question is, have you reached out to Heritage Park, the neighborhood that is, I believe, just across Glenwood, not far from there, probably, I would say less than a mile, maybe 6 blocks. Have they been included in any of the conversations that you've had with the Harrison Neighborhood Association? Because, and then there's also Glenwood Avenue going towards Penn Avenue. Have any of those folks been engaged? There's Milda's Cafe, the business across the street from there. And I say all of this because I realize that our city is becoming more dense, but expanding. And there are folks moving into areas that have not necessarily ever even been present in some of those areas. But I also recognize that there are folks that are going to be getting moved out. So I needed to say that. And then just the building itself. I think you're very talented. I'm not an architect. I'm fascinated by all the windows. But for me, it doesn't if we're going to try to really resonate with the history of an area, then I would like to believe that you've done some research about the neighborhood itself, the area that where it's at, so that instead of just trying to build the bridge to buildings that look like that in downtown Minneapolis. There's a school over there, Harrison Education Center. I'm on their site council, and there are those students in that school, the staff, very dear to my heart. You know, I guess I want to make sure that the folks that you're engaging with are not just the 8 or 9, 10, 12 people that are connected to the Harrison Neighborhood Association. And if you need to have some names of folks that you might be interested in connecting with, by all means, you can reach me at, I can put my school board email in the chat so that I can make sure that you're connecting with some of the folks that probably don't have any idea about what's going in that space. So I just needed to get that out because I don't like the term Bassett Creek Valley because that to me speaks 90210, and I don't like it. So you can keep it if you want to, but I just have to be honest. And I would say that I don't mean to be rude, but I don't. But if I'm just I don't know. I'm worried that there are people that are not going to have any clue about what's being proposed or developed in that particular spot, all up and down Glenwood, going west, and then going north of that location where the Heritage Park area is. There's a senior high rise over there, you know. And then again, one last thing, the materials, you know, this whole brown and gray, it's like, I don't know, can we lighten up a little bit? You know, there's a building that's going up on just across, what is it, Lowry Bridge. It literally speaks volumes to welcome to Northeast Minneapolis. And it just seems to me that when I see buildings being proposed or seeing renderings, it's like just like dark. And the windows are fantastic, but it's just dark. It's kind of almost like the IDS was chopped off at the bottom and, you know, just kind of put around the hospital. So that's my feedback. But anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said, we're in on the agenda for the next Harrison Neighborhood Board meeting, and we're working closely with that executive director. So I assume we can be reaching out to these other neighborhoods and with that executive director and communicate with a more broader scope in terms of your comment.
All right, Commissioner McGuire.
Sorry, I think I was frozen. Can you hear me now?
We can now.
Okay. Okay. I do want to echo what Commissioner Caprini said about the neighborhood and getting those residents involved. In addition to that, I live nearby, so I have been to the Cerveceria a lot. I appreciate you working with them. And I think the field is going to be a great amenity, but I am very concerned about the architecture from that aspect, those large two-story walls with little articulation or visual interest. Based on your building type, it sounds like it might not be possible to add additional articulation because of your volumetric building type. But I think there's probably an opportunity to do something with the adjacent brewery. If you've been inside there, they have amazing art everywhere. They have beautiful murals. They have really vibrant colors and a lot of activity. And I would like to see that if possible, if we can't add articulation and windows to that side, maybe we can work with them to put a beautiful mural and kind of pull the two uses together. Again, go inside there, everybody. It's beautiful inside. So I just wanted to note that I do think we need to focus on four-sided, well, on this building, maybe whatever, 6 or 7-sided architecture. And I would be open to the taller floors on the 2-story first floor if we could try to increase the aesthetics of the building a little bit. I think your building, what is it, Mod 42? I looked at that building and I think it just has a little bit more visual interest and a lot more pedestrian feel than this proposal. So if you could just kind of bump up the architecture and the aesthetics of this building, I think I personally would be a lot more supportive of it.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Marwa.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to commend you guys for doing modular. I think it's really cool to see a product like this kind of coming and becoming more popular in the Twin Cities. I did want to know, are you planning for it to be an affordable housing development? Designated affordable?
Charlie, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, hi guys. Charlie Owens, work on the RISE development team. It's going to be a market rate building, but we plan to abide by the inclusionary zoning. We're working through our pro forma right now, but we intend to, I think, include 8% of the units at 60% of AMI as required. And then also on top of that, we're finding naturally, as we're leasing up Mod 42, and kind of as pioneers, hopefully to this neighborhood, not the first, that many of the units will naturally be affordable between 60% and 80% of AMI beyond that inclusionary zoning requirement.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. I also noticed on the map you have a recent development that my firm just completed that, and we are calling it Northside Art Space Lofts. And so I also was kind of stark with the Bassett Creek something or other. I had not heard that term. We've done 3 years of community engagement to get that project off the ground, and Northside Art Space Lofts was the name of that stuck, and that was vetted by the community for the reason that it's definitely community driven in that sense. I had a question about the pedestrian access from your parking side that would go to the field, like directly. It looked like that would be the driveway for your cars, but it would also be the ped access to Ladonia's field. So I just wanted to make sure you guys have looked that over with the Ladonia people too.
Yeah, we have. There is on the Ladonia side of the property line, and currently a sidewalk, adjacent to their building. So our driveway would be off that.
Okay, so there would be
relocating curb cuts to align for that, so that pedestrians have access on both the north and south of that drive aisle. So.
Okay. All right, just want to make sure. And then it looks like Kimberly has a hand up. I had a couple more questions. Kimberly, do you want to jump in first?
I just wanted to make one clarifying point about the Bassett Creek Valley term. The city had an adopted small area plan from 2007 called the Bassett Creek Valley Master Plan, and we followed it up with a Bassett Creek Valley rezoning study, and it's named that due to the underlying watershed district name that's in that area. So I don't want to discount anyone's comments here, but just so you know, it's a term that the city has used for this area based on adopted plans and policies since 2007.
Thank you, that's helpful. I know you guys weren't calling it the Bassett Creek building, so, but my other comment was going to go along with what Commissioner McGuire was saying, is that Ladonia's done such a great job with placemaking around their building. Inside the building is amazing on the inside, but especially how they've activated those spaces. And then how have the conversations gone with them and feedback around that kind of outdoor space that you all are proposing with them?
Sure. So they actually approached us to partner with them in redeveloping this currently vacant building. And as it sounds like many of you guys have been there, I too patronize it, not as much recently because of COVID, but really like the space. And currently their patio and soccer pitch is sort of just in the middle of parking. And we think that this will, vastly improve, the amenity and make it a more purposeful outdoor space back there with improved landscaping and features. And thank you for all the comments. And we've actually thought precisely that a mural similar to the artwork inside Ladona would be a great idea, and that's something we've considered and are going to further explore.
Yeah, I mean, my issue with the blank walls was not as much as the one on the side with the transformer, but the side where the parking lot was with a really large. It kind of looks, especially if that's going to be the outdoor amenity space for the building, as well as where the Ladonia patrons would be. It feels like a little bit like you're in a jail with the way that the gray walls are kind of, looming over that area. So my comments would be, and Ladonia obviously has great muralists and great artists, and that would help connect that building to that area and what they've already been doing there. And I would, just make sure when you guys come to full commission to the public comment, make that part look a little nicer. It just looks a little drab right now. So either if there's, art will go here or something on those pictures, I think that would help. It just right now looks really kind of sad. I know staff also wanted feedback on the awning or the interest kind of leading towards the entrance that would end up the side entrance of your building that would go towards Ladonia. Is that correct, the staff side? My comment on that would also just, I think you have room to add interest. I understand with a modular building that there's a lot of it that you can't, but I think on that side you could do something with parachute cloth or something to add some interest, especially leading that how busy Ladonia is and you guys are so abutting it so closely, and just kind of help make that whole your building with that area. Because I mean, having people want to live in your building, that's going to be the biggest selling point, is its proximity to what they've already built there, and building off of that, vice versa. Okay, those are my comments. Thank you, Alyssa. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Commissioner Marwa. Commissioner Sweezy, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Yeah, I like this project. I think, I know there's been a couple of other residential projects kind of in that area near Glenwood. I like to see this actually on Glenwood. There's a lot of, space to put things. And I like the idea of an apartment building here instead of the same part of the city where all the apartments are always going up. So I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see a development like this migrate further north. I think all of those things are really positive. Glenwood is a rough pedestrian space, and as long as we're going to start putting things here, maybe this is the time to start looking at that. I like the 2-story first level. I do agree, though, that it is, I don't know what can be done, if it's awnings or lighting or something that can make that a little bit better as a pedestrian scale. Something to look at. I agree with the other commissioners about the blank walls. Generally my first choice, although I do like art, is not that we paint them, because there's still kind of those walls there. But I do understand, I heard what you said about the limits of what can be done. But my first choice would be something besides just a mural, that the actual building have something, part of it that is exposed. Again, but overall, I think that this is a good project. I think it'll be a welcome addition to the neighborhood. I think it'll get more people there. And I think that this is a good start to revitalizing Glenwood Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sweezy. Commissioner Ford.
Thank you. I agree that this is I think a fine project, but I also agree with Commissioner Caprini's comment that it's a little bit I am getting tired of grays and browns around the city. A little splash of color sure goes a long way. But I have a question actually, and that is with regards to what are the sizes of the units that are going to be in the building? I mean, you know, one bedroom, 2 bedroom.
We're gonna have studios all the way through 2 bedroom, 2 baths, everything in between. Aaron at DJR pointed out we'll have some lofted 1 bedrooms, alcove units, more traditional 1 bedrooms, 1+ dens, and then the more traditional 2 bedrooms. And the size ranges will be on the bottom end. There's a couple about 450 square feet up to about 1,000 or slightly larger for the larger units.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ford. Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you. I wanted to reinforce what Commissioner Caprini said regarding the name, and recognizing what Kimberly said. That there's some background for its use of for Bass Creek Valley, but it's still a really sensitive issue. Just wanted to elaborate on that. The Parks for All plan is in draft form right now, and I was just reading it last night. And when it talks about gentrification, it defines it. It says it refers to the modification of a neighborhood, typically due to an increase in desirability. This change often brings increased property values, new and different businesses to the area, and may be signaled by storefront renovations, public work projects, or neighborhood rebranding. And I just wanted to highlight the neighborhood rebranding. Neighborhood rebranding is something that is really associated with gentrification. So I would just be sensitive about that. I wouldn't go with that new name when you're talking about it. That said, I think it is a big improvement from a 1-story commercial space and parking lot to have more people and amenities in the neighborhood. We just want to make sure that the people who are currently in the neighborhood benefit from it and feel part of it. And that, they won't feel that way if they have the sense that it's rebranding into something that they feel is new. And I guess I just wanted to also reinforce what Commissioner Marwa and others have said about the awnings and anything else that we can do to make it feel more pedestrian friendly. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I just want to chime in and apologize for using that term. Thank you for educating me on the implications of my using that term. And I've seen it used in the newspaper and in the city, and I apologize, and we will not use that term going forward.
Commissioner Caprini.
Yes, I wanted to say thank you to Kimberly for the clarification on why that word or that term Bassett Creek Valley was used. Originally, I was going to apologize, but I'm not going to because I meant what I said. And I appreciate the response, not just from the presenters, but also from the other commissioners. But I wanted to thank Commissioner Sweezy for something she said about Glenwood Avenue. Again, I grew up in Minneapolis, in North Minneapolis originally, where Franklin Field was, until Minneapolis Public Schools bought the house I lived in, and my family was pushed out. And then we lived in Bryn Mawr, first Black family in that neighborhood. I would think I was 8. I'm 56, so that many years ago, and we're not very well welcomed. Actually had to have police escorts bring us to Fast Freddy to get graham crackers and marshmallows for some s'mores. So that whole area, my grandmother lived on 822 Morgan. So my family, 9 of us, we ran those streets in terms of just from the parks and just playing and from school and all of those things. So when Commissioner Sweezy brought up that Glenwood is in need of something like this, I've appreciated Ladona. I've been there several times. Appreciate it. There's a couple of other spots on Glenwood that I have not been to yet that COVID actually got in the way of me being able to attend. I say all of this because I'm the kind of person that truly believes if people feel they are connected to something, whether they're going to personally or if they're going, personally benefit from it in terms of like be in that space, they want to know that that what they have to say matters. They want to feel, in my opinion, needed in the conversation so that there's some kind of connection. So when I say that it's important to me that the heritage area, I think it's Heritage Park area that's near there, that there is a connection that is made just in terms of getting them to know what's coming, because this is going to benefit them as well. Because ultimately, what my hope is that this does grow more businesses up and down Glenwood Avenue. And, downtown Minneapolis is growing so much that I stood in the parking lot at Harrison after a site council meeting, and I looked at the skyline and was just flabbergasted of the beauty of the skyline of Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis. And this was 6-7 years ago. And in that moment, I said, downtown is coming for us. So if you're coming for us, let us in. Let us be a part of the conversation. Be intentional about making sure that people are aware and understand the developments that are going on in their neighborhoods so that they feel a part of it. You never know, there may be people that might find some kind of opportunity for themselves within the work that's going up and down Glenwood. So I don't know, this work on the City Planning Commission and the connections that I have with my schools as a school board director, and just the schools in our community and the connections that it has to the city, I'm constantly trying to fill these little gaps. So this is me filling a gap, providing my my feelings and thoughts about what I hope you're willing to do, which is don't just tell me you're going to meet with Harrison Neighborhood Association. Reach out to Heritage Park. They have an association or a something there. I know they do because I've went there the first time I ran for school board and spoke to a ton of families. And the businesses on Glenwood, don't leave them out because they have something to benefit from this as well. We don't know how it's going to lift their businesses up, right? And so that it's just important to me that we be honest in the work that we're doing and intentional. And that's it. I'm done for the night.
Thank you, Commissioner, and we appreciate your feedback, and we will work to expand our neighborhood engagement with other neighborhood adjacent stakeholders. So thank you.
Commissioner Baxley, if you're talking, you're muted.
Sorry about that, Commissioner. I think I didn't hear you. I think you might have been muted announcing me to speak, so I apologize. So
It was me, not you. Yeah. Sorry.
yeah, I'll be brief here. I think again, I think getting this on Glenwood is a good idea. I appreciate the sort of scale and massing and occupying the corner. I think that's great. So I had just a couple questions on the garage space. This is where this blank wall is it fully enclosed? Are you guys fully heating and exhausting that garage space?
It would be, yeah, the garage space would be enclosed. Tempered would be a better word.
Right. But it's not passively ventilated. It's going to be fully enclosed. Okay. Good. Is that for in terms of the rent position, or just kind of because it looks like you have the potential to get to that 50% open area, and maybe a way to begin to think about that blank wall in a really interesting way, and kind of kill two birds with one stone there. But so I just throw it out there to think about that. And I do appreciate the use of modularity. I think it would be nice to sort of evidence that in the tectonic of the building. I think you were using modular to make it look like just normal construction. So I think evidencing the kind of unitization of it is not necessarily a bad thing, because I think they're trying very hard with patterns and stripes and things, even though it's very flat, to kind of make that go away. So I think the modular is terrific. I think understanding it as part of the building construct would be terrific. I'm assuming all those cementitious panels are those hardy type panels that you guys are thinking about for the materials there?
No, more recently we're looking more at metal panels than cementitious panels.
Okay, good.
We're, because of the constructability aspect, you know, and the modular, we're going through what is the best situation for that skin and executing.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, again, I think you've got the apertures and the fenestration, they're big, a lot of light. I think that's terrific. I think somehow the patterning and striation starts to feel more corporate and office than housing somehow. So hopefully you'll continue to evolve that and get it somewhere. But I think the articulation and the massing of the pieces is a good direction. How are these units handled mechanically? They have their own individual magic packs, or you have a central system? How are you guys going to do that?
It could be a combination of both. It could be P-tacks, and then in certain units could be fan coils, or it could be magic packs, depending on, you know, what is the best situation for the size of the unit. Obviously, like Charlie from Rise noted, that we have a wide range of units, but for the majority of units, they're smaller. And we do have some 2 bedrooms located in the obvious spots, being on corners. And those would be higher candidates for something other than a P-tack or something like that.
Yeah, I ask only that certain those things have different registrations, obviously, on the skin of the building. And I know you know that, Aaron. So I just, you know, that will affect it's another layer of patterning there. And lastly, I think again, I don't mind the 2-story on the outside. I think that's absolutely appropriate. You know, there's a scale to Glenwood that feels right. I would say that the development of the ground plane along Glenwood looks like either haven't got there yet, but I would encourage you to, you know, that's going to be important. I don't think it's enough just to be complete concrete out to the road from the building. I'm sure that's not your intention, but just want to make sure that you are thinking about that and putting some care into it. And hopefully that's a potential to get some layering to the building. It's very flat as it sort of rises up out of the ground all the way vertically there. So hopefully some articulation, and with that extra layering on the ground plane, both with built things as well as trees and plant material, I would encourage you to continue to develop. That pedestrian realm is really important. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Baxley. I'm not seeing any other comments, so I'll say what I have, and these are aesthetic comments that I'm saying right after a architect just said some big words. So I'm not an architect, I'll just say that. But I sort of agree on the office building feeling, and I don't think it's necessarily on the corner. I feel like it's the concrete or whatever it is on the residential loft units. It seems bulky to me, and that makes it feel sort of office building-y to me. I do like the idea of awnings just over the residential doors. I think that might be something that brings down the pedestrian scale a little bit without, you know, being a big feature. And then so I'm familiar with the project on 42nd, and I think it has really, really nice lighting. And so I'm hoping that gets carried on into this building. I'm specifically thinking of the sconces that light both up and down, kind of at the pedestrian scale. I think those are really nice and would add some of that detail to the building that it sort of feels like it's missing right now. Although I'm sure, you know, you haven't figured all that out yet. And then the last thing, I'll just say I like a black building or a white building. And sometimes I think color can be too much. So I'll just offer that alternative opinion. And that is all I have. Commissioners, do you have any other comments on this application? All right. Well, thank you. Andrew, did you get everything that you needed from us?
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next up, Kimberly, do we have any staff updates?
No updates for you tonight. We will see you in about a week and a half for our next Planning Commission meeting on March 8th.
Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, we've Commissioner Marwa.
Kimberly, I had a question. In this new format, this way that I'm not familiar with Microsoft Teams, whatever update they just did, can the people who are also talking see our chat?
Yes, so because Committee of the Whole is not a live meeting, we don't need the IT team to run the meeting. So instead, we've just been inviting people into the meeting with the regular invite that you all get as well. So they're participants in the meeting, so they can see the chat, they can see your video, you can see theirs.
Okay, but this is new, right? That now we can see their video, because we usually couldn't. And like literally some questions back and forth because we weren't able to do this before.
We've done it a few times, but it is relatively new still. Yeah.
But
I had been calling in at the beginning, which wasn't ideal.
They what?
They had been calling in at the beginning of all of this, and that was not ideal. They couldn't see what was being presented.
I like this setup a lot better too. This was nice that we could actually literally talk to them and they could reply to us. It felt nice. It felt less disconnected. So.
Agreed. Thank you for the feedback.
All right. If there's no objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Our next Committee of the Whole meeting will be March 11th. Thank you, everybody.